Can you guys hear me? Oh, cool.
Yes.
Sweet, new mic.
All right. Well, the live stream is up and we are off. It's the Meshery development meeting for Wednesday, August 10th. And hopefully those that are on the call see the meeting minutes that are being shared. You're in significant luck today if you're joining. I'm hosting today, so my name's Lee, which means there will be, some plausible jokes or some things that I say that might sound like jokes, and so humor me for force a chuckle occasionally if you would. I expect that there's some folks on the call who are going to drop some additional agenda items, like now is that time before we get rolling. Drop in any items that you have. Folks like Abhi should probably put his toward the top, as well as Ashish. Hopefully you'll have one. If you don't, you can excuse yourself from the call. Those are kind of part of the standing rules here. Just for Ashish, not for the rest. So it's nice to, so we, by the way, so we have a couple of traditions as we get rolling this morning. We tend to welcome newcomers, new faces to the call. We used to have a call about every day in the community. We've got a lot of projects going on. There's Meshery, there's Nighthawk, there's Service Mesh Performance. And then there's any number of other components of things that sort of go around Meshery. So we might talk about the Meshery catalog today. We've got a whole service mesh patterns going on. There's a lot of projects. There's a lot that I'm not listing. But so anyway, my point of that whole discussion was to say, if you've introduced on another call, like the website's call on Mondays, feel free to introduce again here, because different faces, different folks show up to different calls. So it's nice to get to know you. And to help break the ice, let me call out a couple of folks. So we've got an Alex or two on the call. And so Mr. John, did you mind saying hi real quick to everyone? Just to do a quick introduction, if you would.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The time zone is different. It's afternoon around here.
Thanks for saying good morning. It feels good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I couldn't introduce at the website meeting on Monday because of network issues, but now I'm good to go. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to contribute to the UX product design aspect of it. So yes, thank you.
That's awesome. Awesome. Good to have you, Alex. Good to have had you on the website's call as well. Alex, we just noting that you mentioned UX, just, there's an open design review down here that might be of interest to you. I think there's another open UX design review as well. It might not be listed in today's notes, but if you scroll down, you might find another one. Cool. If you're on the call, feel free to drop your name into the meeting minutes. We tally them up at the end of the year. We've got a central pot that everyone chips into. I think it's up to $1 million now. So end of the year, who knows, we could pick your name for that $1 million. Okay. Yes, that was a joke. So the other Alex, Mr. Omosa, do you want to introduce real quick? Or Osama, I'm sorry, I said it wrong.
Omosa.
Oh, Omosa. Oh, jeez.
So I'm Alex. I was introduced once in the newcomers meeting on Wednesdays, like 3 weeks ago, almost a month ago, but I had never had a chance to join one of the meetings since then.
Oh, nice.
I'm so
okay.
excited to join this project. I'm kind of looking for a community, an open source community to just kind of join and have fun.
Yeah, welcome, Alex. That was very nice to have you. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're in good company. There's many folks who come and lurk for a while, or they just hang out for a while, and that's totally acceptable. Some folks come and do that, and they leave, and they do that some more, and yeah, it's there's a lot of learning that happens that way as well. It's good to have you. So Sinan, if you want to introduce Sinan. So let me check the participants list to make sure that Sinan has audio. I think you do, we just can't hear you. So instead, you might want to say hi in the chat. Also, it may seem, just as a point of order, if you don't mind, drop your last name into the participants list. We totally encourage lurking, just not anonymously, if you would. All right, very good. Other new names, anyone else who hasn't gotten a chance to introduce? We've got a meshmate on the call. Oh, yeah, Leonard's already got himself. Good. We got a few meshmates on the call. Okay, good. Let's get started with our first topic. Pranav, you are up.
I'll share my screen and quickly show because the PRs are already merged. So there was a problem on our implementation of SMI page. That was like, if before this PR, if you would have gone there, you wouldn't have seen this pagination functionality because it was not working properly. Moreover, this per page function was also not working. So I just fixed that. Now it works fine. So we could see, and also we couldn't see the total number of results which we actually have in our database for SMI conformance test. So now this thing is done. So this PR is already merged. So I fixed these 4 things. The second item is like the next problem was, which I discovered that we recently updated the Meshery-operator Helm chart, which makes the service type of Meshery-operator as load balancer. But the problem was that since Meshery-operator service have the port 10,000 and the same port is used by Meshery-ui adapter as well, because of which both were conflicting and we weren't able to use our Meshery adapter at the same time when Meshery-operator is deployed in the cluster. So I switch that back to cluster IP so that there isn't any so that the ports are not same ports are not being used. So that's the second thing which I updated. And the third thing is that I added the functionality like if you use Meshery, then like Meshery has a capability of discovering the object which you have in a cluster and then showing it on its own extension, that's mesh map. So initially we didn't have the functionality to discover replica sets in our cluster. So I quickly added that also. So now if you use mesh map, if you have access to mesh map and you go to your mesh map visualizer, and you could see that in the filter, now you see a new field, new kind of replica set. And if you click on that, it will automatically show you all the replica set in your cluster. So if you don't have access to this, you should probably go to layer5.io website and fill the form for this, so that you could get a chance to use it in the better state. And the fourth thing that was that one more thing, it's similar to this third problem, that was that Meshery, when it discovers object, then it adds them into different tables so that it can be referenced by different components of Meshery. So there is a table that is key value pair, which stores the labels and annotation of the different object discovered. So the problem was that it was storing duplicate data, duplicate labels and annotation. And that problem was just because we were not using the correct attribute as a primary key, and that was causing us problem, because of which on every reboot of Meshery, it was again discovering it and again storing it, because the primary key was not the ideal one. I've explained everything over here. So I changed that functionality. I updated the database schema and now kind, key, and value, 4 things are used as primary key, so they work as a composite key. The reason for this is because like here ID can be multiple in the same database. This is because ID represents an object, and an object can have multiple labels or annotation, and it could be multiple values for same object in a database. So hence we cannot individually use only one primary key according to me. So I made 4 of them, so that for each object, each of them should be unique, only then it should be added, otherwise it shouldn't be added. So now it works fine. So I've also explained that with an example. For example, for this particular object, like it was for this same ID, it was showing 30 entries in a database table, but actually it was just 2, which we can see after my changes. So this is still in discussion. If you have any questions regarding this, feel free to get over here and get in the conversation and let me know if there's any more changes or anything which we can do for this. So that's the.
Does anybody have feedback there? Yeah, kind of an intriguing use of unique identifiers through a composite value. There's actually quite a few. Is it 4 attributes that you're using to make as the composite?
Yeah, I'm using ID, kind, key, and value. So yeah, I'll explain the reasoning as well, like why I'm doing it. So
yeah. Good. For my part, I have my fingers crossed for a nice bump in performance.
yeah,
That's great. Yeah, if you don't mind, poke Nitish for review once more.
okay, I'll do that.
All right. Assuming no other feedback, Pranav, did you have other items today?
No, those were the only items I have.
Okay, so let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. 4. That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Just kidding. All right. That's great. Thank you. As a matter of fact, I missed one. I'm sorry. There were other items happening, but so you have an update on Helm charts for meshery-operator. Oh, okay. I see. Yeah. Good. Real quick. Okay. Very good. So there's another PR open with respect to Helm charts, and that's from Serene. I wonder, Ashish, I wonder if Serene is on. If not,
yeah, Serene is not here. She would be there in tomorrow's build and release call, as she said in the message, but we don't have her here right now.
Oh, I see. Okay, she's coming on tomorrow's call. Okay, that's great. So Ashish, do you want to speak to what she's working on the Helm charts?
Yeah, so I can talk about it. Let me share so I can show her PR as well.
Okay.
Okay, so recently Serene created a PR about, so we have 2 different Helm charts. So if you'll go into the install directory and inside of Helm, we have one for the operator and one for Meshery server. And Meshery-operator is kind of a subchart of Meshery, but we are managing it independently because of some issues that were pointed out earlier. The issues regarding if you have a chart as a subchart, then to install that subchart, you need to install the parent chart as well. And in a lot of cases, we just want to install the Meshery-operator, and in a lot of cases, we just want to install the Meshery server. So we had these 2 charts as 2 different charts, and this actually causes a lot of issues when you already have an operator deployed, and from, let's say, this chart, and basically someone tries to deploy a Meshery along with the operator using this chart. So there are conflicts that come every now and then, and Serene's PR was about consolidating these 2 charts into one. yeah, here is her. She would be able to talk a little bit more about it. I haven't tested it right now on my system, but yeah, there are yeah. So this is her PR, and here she has deleted few of the previous. Basically, she's consolidated both of those into one chart. And after we get this tested and in Meshery-CTL as well as Meshery-UI, Meshery server, so all of the places where this chart is used, after we test it that everything is working fine, then we will be able to go ahead and merge it. And more changes about this PR would be discussed in tomorrow's call as well. So right now I'm just quickly glossing over what she's doing, but she would be talking about this thing in tomorrow's call. So yeah, so if you're interested in all the end-to-end tests and in these Helm chart stuff, you can attend tomorrow's call, which would be around 2 hours from this time tomorrow. So yeah, that was a quick update about the consolidating Helm charts. Although we are on me, so I can cover my other item as well, I guess, which was update on the adapter status. And I already called you all for tomorrow's CI meeting, so the second item is done. So so basically we have this adapter, this cells to track the status of each of the adapters. We have a bunch of them. So these 3 columns recently got added. So we are now ARM compatible across all of the adapters. As well as the version core components, which is to say that I had actually talked about it in the last call as well, so I won't go over it again. If you want to, I can go over, but yeah, the core idea is that we have something called as a core component. Like if you want to install Istio, we have a Istio mesh component. We have add-ons that we give out of the box, and those are now versioned. So for each service mesh version, you can have those custom add-ons and the custom Istio mesh installation under that given version. So that support is added for each of the adapter. And previously we were relying on a Node.js based binary, which kind of inflated the size of our image. QOpenAPI JSON schema binary, but later we didn't need that binary, but that wasn't removed from the Docker file, but that has also been removed from all of the Docker files across the repos. So the image is a little lightweight now. Yeah, Subhradweep, you have something to say? I guess he accidentally opened his mic. Anyways, so yeah, so about the end-to-end tests, there are the few discussions around the end-to-end tests. There are a few open PRs, but I will be discussing in depth about the end-to-end tests that we have and adding more end-to-end tests in tomorrow's CI call, as I mentioned. So for people who are interested in GitHub workflows, end-to-end tests, and all these things, please attend tomorrow's call for more details.
Nice. Yeah, folks have questions for Ashish. So, you know, the part of what he was describing is the desire, I would say the need to eliminate a duplicative set of Helm charts. There have been just any number of issues with Helm in general. And one of the outstanding items is the fact that, there's a duplicative set. And that might just be the limited knowledge that we generally have toward Helm, or lack of capability of Helm to let you judiciously determine which charts you want to deploy. Anyway, it's causing issues. So hopefully Serene has it figured out. Good. Next on the agenda was an update from Shin and Hersh. I don't know that Hersh is on. Shin sent an update. So the two of them have been working within the CNCF Lab. They've automated the scheduling of performance tests, and those performance tests and the results are being pushed to the SMP spec, the service mesh performance dashboard, which you can see here. Some of the tests that they're running are failing. And so they're going to investigate. I don't know that all service meshes are represented in these tests just yet. Uh-oh. Subedi isn't on. Let's see if we can reproduce that error. Okay, I don't know. Anyway, that's what that topic was about. And Ashish gave this update. And so Yash, you want to talk about the next version of Meshery-ui?
Yeah, let me share my screen here. So what I've done is like connected the pages of performance for 5 pages and patterns pages from the backend. So they are importing them from the server itself. Before that, I was using a sample data for testing them out. And yeah, and I also made like a drop down for the tests. So and other updates from Shubhradeep and Leonard or Kakirat. I guess Leonard, any updates from you on the UI restructuring? Sure.
So Yash, since we are on your topic, so how we are processing next on having a global set of Meshery theme?
We are using a MUI theme, and I think it is handling most of the styling, but we have to increase the use of it as we move forward, and we can review theme from the restructuring branch.
Yeah. As you said earlier, also about like you must have written a docs, something to review, so we can have a review and look about your approach you're using over there.
Yeah, let me find.
Okay, so pretty much I have been trying to work on the performance page so far, and it's still ugly right now, and I know Lee doesn't really like to see a design like this, so very ugly at the point. So, but I'm trying to see if I get the UI to look exactly what it is in the current master branch, then try to improve or extend from what Yash has done to make sure that the data is coming from the backend. So there is nothing going on at this point with the data. It's literally dummy data from left or around in the performance page. But then I'm actually working on it. I had some hiccup given the fact that I need to figure out on how the components connected to each other. It was quite too many. So I have to installing some other dependencies that is not currently installed in the restructuring branch. So to be able to get to look like this.
Nice. Yeah, sorry for interrupting, Leonard. It was your voice was a bit low. There was part of it that we couldn't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Good.
Okay. So what I was saying is that I said trying to fix this, like I've been like installing some other dependencies that's like packages that hasn't been installed yet, as well as trying to figure out how the components are connected to each other. And so literally there's no data moving in this page at this point. So, but then I spoke with Yash and he said somehow he has written some methods that I could also use in the performance page as well, so that we could connect both the performance page and the profile page later. So that's it. So that's all for the update I have for this page at this point. So it's ugly, I know. So yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, I guess, have you had a chance to try out or rather, let me ask it like this, of the calendar component so this is a super early draft, but are you seeing any early challenges with the calendar component?
Okay, currently I have not really like looked deep into the calendar for now. I know there is a moment, so but then I'm trying to see if, but then once I encounter a challenge, I eventually reach out to the Meshery-ui group or anything. But for now,
Okay,
no,
sure, sounds good. Yeah, you haven't really gotten there yet. Okay, makes sense.
okay.
All right,
So
great update.
is there something I should be looking forward to? Like, is there something I should concentrate on? Like some issues you feel I probably might approach, right, or might meet on the way. So maybe from now I could start thinking about it. Is there some challenge currently? I'm actually asking you.
Yeah, no, I don't recall there being a challenge with that component in the past.
Okay.
Just for everyone's to refresh your memory, or if you haven't seen that particular component before, it's a calendar view of performance results. So for tests that people have run, I think I have Meshery up and running here. I'll show you. So the user that I'm signed in as has run a test or two. I'm not sure if I can. So basically, it's a right now the calendar is a history of tests that have been run. I'm not sure when the last time this user ran one. Okay, here we go. So they ran some on this day. In concept, maybe they ran 10 total. Wait, let's do that again. So 7 more. Yeah, that makes sense. So, and what users are able to do is just kind of quickly call up the test results for individual test runs that were performed at that day time. The reason that I mention this is that it's future, there's API, there's backend capability for scheduling a performance test in the future. But none of that in the UI. So something that to keep in the back of your mind, Leonard, as you get to this area, is that ultimately we will ideally want for people to be able to schedule their performance tests using this calendar interface.
Okay. Is this on the back end or on the front end? Sorry. Is this like
Yeah,
on the UI or the back end?
The functionality has been completed on the back end for the but hasn't been exposed on the front end. So
Backend, we are using Go, right?
yeah, largely. Yeah. For Meshery server anyway.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I also have to show something else on the restructuring. So it's like a big overview of where we are at the restructuring. So most of the work, the component creation are done. Either they are merged, PR raised, or they are under work. The only thing which lacks work is the SMI page, and I don't know anything about that. I tried using it, but I couldn't find any way to use that.
Yeah, there's no configuration of it. It's just like the way that you invoke those tests is you do it from the lifecycle menu. If you have an adapter loaded, you'll go to that specific service mesh, and there'll be an option in there to run an SMI conformance test. If the test concludes, the results are then displayed under this conformance area in a table. So,
and one more thing I wanted to talk about, like now I started to connect the data, and I can't run the back. The Meshery server shows this error, SQLite error. Anyone knows the reason for that?
Yeah, I wonder if the version of, gosh. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you should probably open up an issue. Yeah, I wonder if it's.
And we also have to update the whole backend components, the servers, because I tried making new GraphQL queries. I made one for the for performance and patterns page, but I have to generate them from the master branch as I also have to update a lot of stuff in the server.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Good to mention. So you're saying, hey, you might be seeing that error because the Meshery server that you're running incorporates changes outside of the master branch. Yeah, very good. Very good. That's why, that's why I didn't have an immediate answer, because it would just be surprising if that was. Yep, makes sense. All right. Any other, so if you didn't, if this wasn't obvious, there was kind of an implicit call to action for those that are into UX or those that are into product design, is the current version of Meshery has a particular UI, and it's served the project okay thus far. It's time for an overhaul, both in terms of the frameworks that are used to build the UI, but also it's time for an overhaul, like much more largely of the user flows, the UX itself. And if you're here with a UX orientation, that might sound compelling to you and exciting, and I hope it does. I also give a forewarning that it's really fudging hard. Like, it won't be a simple thing for you to jump in and comprehend the personas, what they're going after, the user flows, what they need to do, how they need to accomplish it, how quickly they could do that. Like, there's a whole headspace around that. I totally encourage all of you to jump into that. Recognize that there's very few maintainers compared to the number of contributors. And so they'll all do their best to kind of answer your questions and feed you info as we go. But so yeah, there's a real challenging opportunity set out there about that redesign. The other part that was implicit to this discussion of the UI is for those JavaScripters, or for those that are focused on implementation of the UI. There's a spreadsheet that that Yash is displaying right here that's tracking the implementation of these different components. So, and there's more to be added to the list. So if that excites you, jump in. Nice. All right. So good. So Yash shared, and Leonard shared. And I don't know if Alpha's on the call.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. All right. We're up to you.
Yeah, okay. Sharing my browser screen. I hope it's visible now. Okay, so for past like for 1 week, I have been working on creating the design spec for the meshery-ui app import subcommand. So if you guys ask like what's the intention of this command, is like if you have some of the application manifest or configuration files and you need to import them onto the Meshery but not deploy them, then this command is intended to serve such purposes. So after receiving some of the suggestions, received some folks, I have re-edited the design spec file and also added like the implementation. It's like an generic algorithm so that some guys can understand what will happen and how the execution will happen. And I also added the flowchart like beta on like behind the scenes scenario, like what are all the process should Meshery-CTL will execute, and if is there any process in which Meshery server would serve, as well as in Meshery cloud. So this one is still work in progress though, but somehow after receiving the suggestions the folks gave, so I thought like, okay, why not create the flowchart like this, like a swim lane diagram. So I've created such. And yep, if there are any suggestions to improve this design spec or in terms of functionality, so yep, you're open to ask now. Any feedback?
Yeah, Alpha, for my part, I consider that the flowchart that you have here is very broadly helpful for not just this command, but for Meshery-CTL commands at large. Actually, specifically with what we were talking about with respect to the Helm charts earlier, something like this would certainly clarify for Serene why there's two sets of charts and when one gets used versus the next. And so I think so I know that this flowchart is specific to this particular command. But I would definitely, yeah. But many aspects of it are, would tend to be universal. And yeah, it's just a very helpful reference. I think like a generalized version of this would be, very helpful to have in the Meshery-CTL contributor guide. Yeah.
Okay, that would make sense.
And then, do you? Yeah. Do other people have feedback? Please jump in. I for my part, maybe I need to go back and look. I thought that of the time that I'd looked, like, yeah, it's a fairly relatively straightforward set of behavior that is supposed to happen. Is basically a subset of what happens today. Today, people might use the command meshery-ctl app onboard that would take a file, a Helm chart or a Docker Compose file or a Kubernetes manifest, ingest that definition of the application as the first step. And the second step, it would then also deploy that application. And what you're doing is saying, well, we're sort of being very opinionated with that onboard command. We're taking two steps in one. Users might just want to take the first step and that's it. And so to me, it's like, yeah, hey, go implement, because like all you're doing, you're just putting a breakpoint in the middle of existing behavior. So yeah, go.
Okay.
Is there any, and that's probably a good way of asking, is like, is there anything in here that deviates from that oversimplistic description of a breakpoint? Like, is the importing using this proposed import command any different from the first half of the onboard command? Okay. Is there literally any change? If not, you've got a beautiful spec that probably doesn't need to be so long. You should just start. You should go. I don't know that I've ever said that to anyone here. It's like, oh, that's too much spec. But like, honestly, all you're doing is putting a breakpoint, right? So if there's something different, then that's reason to write it down. If not, put your
Okay,
fingers.
Also, Ruturaj had added the source type support in Meshery-CTL app onboard in quite a hurry. So that command is also not very well tested. And I'm pretty sure that there is a bit of hard coding going on there. So while you are working on this, also take that existing command into consideration and how that works with this one. Because improving a little bit of logic there would ultimately help you here as well. Because at the end we don't want to duplicate logic. We want to because onboard actually imports and then deploys. So we do want to have singular logic. So whatever logic we have right now that Ruturaj had written, you can basically check if what bug there is. If there is a bug, is there any hard coding there? And once you basically better that logic a little, that logic can be used over here as well. And then we already have the deploy thing. So so basically, we have an import and then we have a deploy, and the logic for deploy is inside Meshery-CTL pattern apply, because at the time of deployment, what you would be deploying will be a design, or what you like to call it, a pattern. So the job of import will be to take your K8s manifest or Helm or anything and then convert that into a, because we in our central database, the format in which we store data is a pattern file. So the second stage, the deployment stage, we already have the logic for that. And we already have a lot of logic for importing as well, the source type thing, what Ruturaj had. So yeah, I think there might be a lot less work in this area than you might think. So yeah, Lee's right. So you should go ahead and start writing code and create a PR.
okay. Then I will start working on this then. That's for sure. Okay. Thanks, Ashish. And yeah,
And just
Nice.
I just wanted to differentiate between these two stages, so
yeah,
that
go ahead.
when you implement that, just make sure that code is readable in a way that it basically speaks that, okay, this is where we are importing, and this is the logic should be inside of a package. It should be there, and then it can be reused across different commands or sub commands. So the logic for importing along with source type and all, and the logic for deploying that we already have. So just make sure that you don't rewrite any code. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, I understand it. Thanks for the tip. You were about to say something, Lee?
Oh, I was just going to kind of repeat myself and say how wonderful it is to have that diagram. And I think that you should, it's fantastic to have it in this doc specific to this command. It drives a ton of clarity. I highly encourage you to pull it, to have a generalized version in, well, whether it's in the contributor guide, which is great, which would help people comprehend the general flow, but then also, I suppose it's just the contributor guide. It might make sense to have in some of the, inside of some of the commands specifically, maybe a more simple version, because you can imagine some users may not quite comprehend what all transpires when they do the onboard command, for example, if it's taking multiple steps. And so anyway, these types of diagrams are really, really great. Fair enough. Very good. So I think Mr. Chatterjee, Aditya, are you next on the agenda?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I will resolve this second item too. So is it good to implement the same logic for the filter import command as similar to this? This is just the query only, nothing much.
Yep. In essence, like I am going to oversimplify again, and it's really, I would just say it's actually not oversimplifying. It's literally take a file as input, store that file.
Okay, understood.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But that's really good. So the app command, the filter command, the design command. Yep. We want to be completely consistent if we can with all types of content. So they each should have an import they each should have the equivalent of an apply. Apply being like for the app command, it's onboard. Cool. Good. I assume that. So Chatterjee, you're up.
Yep. Okay, so we've been talking about a catalog for a long time now. We've had a catalog on meshery.io some time now, but yeah, we've been trying to implement a similar sort of interface in Meshery-ui, so that new users have preceded content and they're not lost as to what they have to do. Okay, so as Leonard is working on the back end of things, we've come up with a basic design of how the table view and the grid view of it would look. So in the table view, this would be on the designs page itself, and we'll add another column for visibility, which would say public or private. A public design would mean that it's a catalog item, which should be able to fork and then edit. All these patterns would be uneditable because they're they're preceded. We don't want them. We don't want anyone swearing inside this pattern. That's why they'll be uneditable, and then you can fork them. And you can, without forking them, you can deploy them, but to make edits, you have to fork them. This is what the grid view would look like. This would have a description, the caveats and considerations, and it would also show which servers are compatible with these designs. And yeah, so to differentiate between catalog items and your personal designs, we'd also add a filter here which would hide the catalog item so that you can only view your items. And yeah, that's about it. This is just a first iteration that we've made. I see a lot of UXers on this call. If you guys can suggest make this better, if you have any suggestions on how to make this design better, please feel free to do so. The link is in the minutes, but I'll leave a link in the chat as well. Yeah, so any thoughts and suggestions that people would like to give right away?
Aditya, for context for others, you might show the web-based catalog.
Yeah, so this is the catalog that we have on meshery.io right now. This has a couple of patterns. Most of them are, we still need to write most of them down. From here, a user can either download a pattern or copy its URL and import them into Meshery-ui. But with having a catalog inside Meshery-ui itself, it would make it a better user experience. It would be easier for anyone to do it from there. So yeah, that's we don't want any work repeated. So like it would be very similar to what we have over here. And if anyone does have design that they think they can implement better, please make a copy of this and let's not make change to the designs that we already have in place. You can leave a big label beside it saying it's draft, and you can work on that separately. Any feedback, anyone?
Yeah, just to help tie that off and give everybody as much context as possible. This is the current Meshery-ui interface for browsing designs, for browsing those catalog items. The items that I'm looking at right here were created by the user that I'm signed in as. So this user has created a design called Emoji Photo. And the design, when you look at it behind the scenes, it's a bunch of YAML. People are able to create their own designs and edit them They can use this style editor to go through and build out this design, this quote unquote design. Great. Other people in the community have also spent time creating designs. They then want to share those designs with everyone else to use. And when they do, those designs are published in that public facing catalog out here on the website. Great. If these are highly curated and well done and made to be a little generic, they can then be imported from the website into Meshery-ui, into the application as you're running it. Good. Aditya and Raj and Uzair and Pranav, a collection of contributors, are working to bridge the divide between the content that you see inside of Meshery-ui, inside the app, versus the content that you see out here on the website. They're trying to just bring those much closer together so that the two become essentially interchangeable. So you as a user can make your own designs here, but that also, if you wanted to import from the catalog, you wouldn't have to go out to the website, browse that, find the one that you want to use, copy that URL, come back to Meshery-ui, import the design, paste the URL. Oh, let's see if this works. Oh, it worked. That's no surprise. That's of no surprise, obviously. Of course it worked. It's just, and, you know, heaven forbid that I had to do those two steps, you know, browse the catalog, click the button, you know, and import over here. Rather, what they're doing is pulling in that catalog content to be displayed alongside the individual user's content, and letting people do that import as a new action, as a new fork action, which is what Aditya was showing in the design. So I think we've described it about 4 different ways now. So this is a great area. If you're here focused on UX, this is a great area to jump into. It's a fairly, you don't need to know anything about service meshes and Kubernetes and Docker and designs and what the heck these things. It's just a catalog and users importing an item from a catalog. So it's a great one to jump into. All right. If you have questions about that, please see Aditya in Slack. He's one of 62 Adityas here, so you'll find him. Don't worry. Okay, Abhi, do you want to talk about GitHub Actions or Eslint rather?
Yeah. So recently we had been demanded of adding the GitHub action, especially for Eslint checks. So I just hopped on call today with Aditya to get those updates, because we are kind of in hurry in the regard. So he won't be available for this week at all. So that's why I had to take this forward as a new PR, and I think I have created one of the PR adding the checks, and all the checks are successful. So that's the update from my side. About GitHub actions. So what we are doing is there is a new GitHub action that is check runner Eslint, and then what it does is it runs Eslints, and if there is some errors, then it will show the errors in the marking the error in this files definitely. Yeah, so that's it.
Are these also pre-commit hooks?
Yeah, so they are inside the pre-commit hook also, but pre-commit hook can be suppressed by the contributor, and that's where some of the checks get missed by the reviewers. So adding it here is, it's not under control of anyone, so it will run anyways. So it can't be suppressed. So that's why it kind of provides the actual status of the pull requests. So to your question, yeah, it is also in the pre-commit hook, by the way, but that can be suppressed. That's the problem.
Nice. Mr. Young, did you have a comment earlier? Did we miss your feedback?
I had a question about the catalog stuff, but I'm also, this is my second meeting and I'm not sure. I don't want to take up too much time. I don't know if this is the right place to talk or if I should follow up in Slack. So.
No, it is, and it's helpful because Divine, Alex, Alexis, Chinendu, and Sonnen, there's like 6 other folks here who would very much benefit from the question.
Sure. This isn't super well formed. Like I didn't prep, questions for, I just, in looking at the demo and checking out, I just got into Figma as well, which is really awesome. I guess I had 2 questions. One, when a user imports a design, or when a user imports a pattern into their design, or that they start a design from a pattern, is it sort of like one of those old Visual Studio like one-way wizards, right? Where it's like it's basically a copy and then that's it, or is it more like a forking and tracking the deltas kind of thing? So like if they wanted to push changes back or iterate on the pattern and then propose it, is that a workflow that's here? And then the other one I'll just mention just so I could just not go into one too deep, but the other one was when you're building designs, you usually go in through that browser you showed and you could choose what Kubernetes version that you're pulling the definitions from. Once there is a design, are there any workflows either doing it sort of backpage style, backspace style, where somewhere there's like a GitHub action running, or there's some sort of CI running because it's backed by a Git repo, or is there some workflow within the tool that might test the various versions of Kubernetes? Like there's a GitHub action we used to use for Kubernetes YAML that's awesome, which will let you test like a matrix of Kubernetes versions to identify deprecations that you might have in objects that are tied to a particular version of Kubernetes. So, like if I'm using this as my editing surface, like open question, like should the UI tell me, oh, by the way, you're pulling in something that in 6 months is going to evaporate, right? Or something like that. Like, but again, I've been digging into the docs and you guys, y'all built so much. It's awesome that there's so much I still don't know. But like, one way to do it is kind of have like their, when they make a new design, like if that's backed by a Git repo somewhere or something like that, where, the state isn't kept on some Meshery backend, but it's kept local, then that might facilitate it, but I don't know more than I do. So those are my 2 high level questions about the intent of the catalog.
Yeah, those are wonderful. We were just talking about.
And the last one was like, can I pull in multiple patterns to one design?
Yeah. So let me answer that last one first, because it's probably the shortest, which is, so I just imported from the catalog this Istio, this Spire configuration, and loaded it into the map here. If I load, Abhi, there might be a bug going on here. The answer to your last question is that yes, that you can take and merge multiple designs. So if this one has a binding component, and
also I'll say for all 3 of my questions, feel free to tell me, Matt, you need to go play with the stuff more and be, if they're newbie questions that are RTFM stuff.
No, none. All 3 of those are not documented or not obviously documented. Like, so it's a really good. Like, one is that you can do this, which is, you as a user of MeshMap, if you take a design and if you click it, it loads just that design. If you click and drag another design, this right here may or may not work, because what I was doing was combining the same design on top of itself. And so that's why this didn't work. But you can otherwise, take and combine designs you can do a merge in that regard. So that's
Also,
the last question.
Yeah, I also just wanted to toot my horn there that on the back end, actually, we have a support for importing patterns. So what you can recursively have designs inside of designs so that you can have a compact design where one service just does Istio installation, and which actually points to a whole another design which has all those things. And then another service, let's say, it does something else. It installs book info app. So we actually, if you'll go inside of service mesh patterns /service mesh patterns and you'll use meshery pattern apply, you can actually deploy those things, and those things do work. So yeah, that we do have that thing at the core. That was my point.
Cool. And is that done by sort of the way you explained it in words, like, one thing refers to another, or do you actually compose these and build a full separate copy of all this? Is it sort of like a GraphQL API kind, where like, oh, I made a new component and that's now a new type that I can refer to, right? Where it's dried up, or is it sort of like when I go make a new component, it's making a copy that can then...
Yeah, actually at the back end, how we do it is that right now we only support by URL. So if you refer to something by URL, it will fetch all those services from that and then expand those into this new pattern, into this new design. And if you reference that in something else, then it will take all these services. So it'll kind of do a bottom up resolution of all these services until the point that you have a new whole design which has all these, like, let's say 100 services. But on your screen you won't be able to see that. You will be seeing like one service per, that one service would be pointing to that one single design. Internally it would be like it may be 100 services,
and they're pinned to a version, or when I'm referring to things via URL, when they change on the backside,
yeah, it changes.
It'll just change. Okay, so it's not like a pinned, it's not like a package.json.lock. It's just okay.
But but I mean, there's which is, I don't know, which is nice.
Oh, I'm just wrapping my head around what is. That's all. I've been doing doc dives mostly, so this is really useful to my next couple of weeks will be actually hands-on a little bit more. So
nice. Yeah, it's supposed to be, the answer is supposed to be both, or rather, it's configurable, that each individual design is to be versioned, and that there's this extraordinarily nuanced distinction between a design and a pattern. And the hope is that as the pattern evolves, that the pattern is more of that generally reusable component that itself is versioned, but is intended to be made reference of, that it is in concept, like it's operational in nature. It has maybe some best practice. It orients the user towards some best practices. It encapsulates some functionality. Maybe like, I think a great example is something like a circuit breaker. To do circuit breaking in Istio, that might take you to configure your virtual service and your destination rule, and maybe some other things. But that if you're able to combine both of those, both of what would be normally two individual entities or objects or resources to configure, you'd combine those into a single pattern, and that pattern would be represented as one object. And so you drag over the circuit breaker capability, and when it's represented, it's just one thing that what's the word I'm looking for? Abstracts.
Is it parameterizable? Like, can you give it? Okay, so it's templates with inputs and outputs. So really, you've got all the art. You've already got the rudiments to make a general purpose composability mechanism that could be arranged as a filter graph, or that could be arranged in other kinds of ways. That's cool. Okay, and then the third one was about the different Kubernetes versions.
There's a couple of ways to answer. I think the way in which, so there's some good news with respect to, and actually it's like somewhat of a similar approach using GitHub workflows to have a matrix of GitHub versions through which, every PR goes through this, set of tests. Part of the end-to-end tests that occur are like provisioning of one of the service meshes, provisioning of a sample app.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I meant something way more lightweight, like kind of like what the Kubernetes folks do in their CI, like where they just run the API server and just use like the validation features of it. It's not actually doing all the stuff. It's just making sure everything is well formed.
Actually, if like you have a version of Kubernetes and you load up a design that is not compatible with that version of Kubernetes, you will get validation errors there that this version of Kubernetes actually has deprecated this thing, so you can't use it. So we will actually throw those errors at you.
While you're interactively doing stuff, or at like that summary page where you can kind of, like, I'm kind of thinking like, what happens when I use this for a while, right? So like now I'm running my stuff, this is awesome. I can click drag, I can make my own catalog of things. I can even curate them so that I can make patterns that other people can use if I'm moving to kind of CAPI and cluster as a service for my teams being engineering teams that are my customer in this. Sorry, I put a hat on here. So now I'm like Kubernetes. And then like 6 months goes by, right? So now I'm like, I've got a stable of these things, like 20 or 30, and I've got a bunch of teams using them and they're pinned to a version and they're all in flux at the same time. I was kind of thinking when I saw that, like, when I saw that we don't have that, we're still doing the design for like the top level, like it seems like there's some sort of operational view that might be like, okay, well, this pattern needs to be revisioned. So I'm gonna have to communicate that internally to all the people using it. So you've got this like,
actually we have an end-to-end test which if like you can share the compatibility matrix, which actually runs tests against multiple Kubernetes versions. So we have right now few pattern files, like, so we have basic SQMesh installation, book info installation, and all those things. And we actually caught one thing that OSM had deprecated in a previous Kubernetes version. You can go see those in our tests. So one of the ideas can be that if you have your designs that you want to keep track of their validity across coming Kubernetes versions, you can add those inside of those workflows. And I don't think this is the latest page, or the PR didn't get merged, because on the top.
This is great. This is so timely because 1.25 deprecates pod security policies, and like, get ready, everybody. Every Helm chart in the universe is about to faceplant for a month or two. So.
Which is good, which is an angle or one perspective of what Matt is asking about. Another angle is the sort of design time validation that goes on if if a value is, if a required entity isn't filled in, like this name I think is a required field. I don't know if it'll
like this is exactly what I meant. Like, it's totally cool to do it on the design side, like where you don't let bad things in, but like over time things will rot, right? Because something might move from like optional to required, right? And so like now you've got like a persisted pattern that used to work but now isn't going to work, right? So if it's only a design time check and you have to go into the design to find it, that's why like a bubbled up view might help like identify what are problem areas, and then you can zoom right to that point to allow interactive fixing. But and then once that's done, like as somebody running a bunch of patterns, I would almost be like, hey, can I do a git log? Can I see what changed where? Because I'm going to have to, like, again, as an operator, I'm going to have to correlate that with my internal systems, that my workflows for like CIO and DevSecOps and threat modeling and all that stuff, my change management, rather, my enterprise change management will have to, somehow have a linkage, or my CIO freaks out because I make a manual workflow for his team. So these are kind of, I'm kind of thinking about all of this. I'm not criticizing. I think I can't wait to like dive in deeper, but like, I'm kind of coming at it from I'm running Kubernetes at scale mindset, and just kind of like surfacing things here that are still at design time. But I fear I've taken too much time already.
Yeah, I think there's a good issue to probably open with respect to catalog, the curation of catalog content and the ongoing, and sort of the initial gating of that content, but then also the ongoing verification that, if something's listed in the catalog, especially if there's like levels of support that are associated, that these are curated things, that they are going to work if you download them under the constraints by which they were defined. But for the ones that are just like ongoing, used a lot, maybe it's this circuit breaking one, it's just used all the time, that there's an implicit expectation from, I would think, from users that drive by the catalog and want to use something, that that they'll be taken care of, that the latest Kubernetes is supported, or that like, and that's an ongoing validation that occurs. So there's
Yeah, and also I'd like to point out that in Meshery catalog, we have caveats and consideration that can be even more dynamic than you think. So we can have CI workflows running for multiple versions of Kubernetes, and those caveats and considerations might point out that, hey, this works with this version and this works with that version, and it's not manually entered. It's the CI workflow runs that design for as a cron job for that version, and if it fails, it is marked in the caveats and consideration. So once you import the design, at the import you can know, okay, so this is not going to work with me, or because of that caveats and consideration that was shown in the Figma design.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Does this turn into a marketplace later, like this catalog? Or is it meant to be a curated thing where, you know, there's the curated patterns, but like as people make these reusable chunks, is the intent that they can share it with each other, or is it not?
With each other. Yep, very much so. With each other to get, I don't know how, like on one hand, there's this thought that maybe like we would, Matt, this is actually, I think you'll have, it's good to plant the seed in your mind, because this might be something that you form some thoughts on and opinions on, is like one thought here is to go fork Artifact Hub and build it into much more of a like broad set of different types of content that are supported, and who did it, and ongoing, and this is more than forking isn't something we necessarily desire to do, but it's also heavier and more than the community can probably undertake at the moment. Part of the thought, just like different thoughts that were out there, was like, oh, maybe we should have a Meshery pattern as an entity that's first class supported over here. Another train of thought had been, that we might take something like Git-ia, which is an MIT licensed git-based, is to take this and build it as a lightweight Golang based Git system internal to Meshery, such that there is implicit versioning happening to help satisfy part of what you were articulating. And then there's really that collaboration, sharing, and ultimately kind of permissions around this. Right now, there's 4 contributors that are working on adding visibility as an attribute of each catalog item, to whether the visibility is private or public, and just starting from that simple point of, but ultimately, the ability to next time you're in GitHub making an issue, you captured like 3 of them or so pretty elegantly on the call. So don't be shy.
Okay, I'll go make an issue for that, and I'll say also in closing on the bit about Artifact Hub, I think it's worth considering. Like if you look at the cross-plane project, from the get-go, they said, okay, well, we're going to distribute our cross-plane patterns, if you will, or compositions as OCI images. So now, like anyone's existing infrastructure, whether it's Harbor or Quay or what you just put up, they're all easy to version and distribute as OCI containers, as OCI images. So it's like their artifact format is that. So, like when you install Crossplane, you basically install like RPM or NPM, something that's a Crossplane bootstrapper that's really just an OCI client. And then you can go like, Crossplane pull AWS's set of compositions, right? And those compositions are Kubernetes things, or new kinds of things that could be surfaced in MeshMap as well, right? Because it's all just
especially when you consider distribution of a binary like a WebAssembly filter, or that fits even more into that.
That's what the Bumblebee project does, that came to tag observability. If you're not already familiar with Bumblebee, it's out of Solo, but it packages up eBPF stuff as OCI.
Does EB, okay. Yeah. Well, fair enough. So we're over time. And in the best of ways, I suppose. Good. If you had items today that we weren't able to cover, please don't hesitate to just do a quick recording and drop that into Slack or drop it onto the Discuss forum. It's very nice to have some new faces today. And yeah, so we'll see some of you for tomorrow's Meshery CI call. And if not, we'll see you on one of the meetings next week. So thanks all for coming. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.